Welcome to Beers with Contractors. We're cracking a cold one and taking a deep dive into the foundations of your business, pun intended, to unearth the strategies, techniques, and insider knowledge that can take your contracting business to the next level. So, grab your favorite beer, pull up a seat, and let's have a chat about the nuts and bolts of the construction industry.
Here we are, another episode of Beers with Contractors. Nice. Well, so you already opened it, so you have to make the noise.
I've noticed in the past, like the crack doesn't come through the microphone. Maybe Drake marks it out or anything, but yeah, we got a special episode today.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. This is going to be different. We have basically some content that we thought would be valuable to our listeners, questions that we've gotten from different people. And we were like, hey, we're giving answers to one contractor. I'm sure there are others out there that have the exact same question, right? And so we're going to do something a little different. Will, you want to share a little bit where we're going with this?
Yeah, so I have meetings all throughout the week, online, some in person, some email, some text message. I mean, heck, I had 5 of them today. But also through the listeners of our podcast, they send me questions like, hey, how do you handle this? What is that? And rather than trying to handle those one-off, I'm trying to be efficient. So we're going to take a little time out from our format. This will not be the new format, but I mean, as these questions come in, maybe every few episodes, maybe not every other, but maybe every 10 episodes, we recap and say, hey, let's go over some questions. So we're going to spend today just kind of going over the questions directly from you, listeners. And I love saying that. We've been poking fun at this whole listener singular versus 3 listeners, but I'm really excited that all of you out there have been listening and engaging with us. We love to hear from people. We love contractors. So let's just start at the top, and I'll try my best not to give you one-word answers, Dylan.
Yeah, that would make a very boring episode. People are going to tune in. And just to be clear, anyone that's listening, you're going to want to stay to the end. There's going to be some really fun ones at the end that I think will be high value for you, especially if you own or operate the business. And all of these questions are going to be dating advice. So that's what Will gets the most. Is he's like, I there's this girl I really like, and I don't know what I should do for my next. No, all of these questions are going to be about operating your business. What do we need to do to really enhance what we're already doing to take our business to the next level and break through a glass ceiling that we've got that's holding us back? And so, number of different questions. Go ahead.
This is what's best about this. You sent me the Google Doc and you're like, here's the list of questions, and I didn't read them. So it's going to be totally genuine, off the cuff, right from the gut. So let's see how this goes.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's jump in. So I'm just going to shoot here. Number 1, a listener asked, what's the best marketing source that you have for leads?
Okay, marketing source for leads. I don't know if they'll like this answer, but I think, Dylan, you've heard me say this, and whoever asks this question, this is a very common question, because I think most smaller contractors, they have one major lead source, and that's always been their business, and then they hit a ceiling or they plateau. So that now they're asking, hey, where are you getting more leads? So I look at leads like a diversified stock portfolio. Just to be clear, 50% of my lead, call it portfolio or lead inbound lead flow, is from online marketing. Online meaning organic, and then paid advertising, social media, things like that. Main reason being is we have television, we have home shows. If you're a small contractor and you hit a ceiling and you're not doing any home and garden shows, boy, they are back full throttle right now, post-COVID. Finally, I mean, to be able to dump 40, 50, 60 leads in a weekend into your sales funnel is huge. Sometimes it's just difficult for people to want to spend time in a 10 by 10 booth all weekend. But really, everything down to branding our trucks to yard signs. Depending on your service, I'm not a fan of radio, but my services are very visual. So it's hard for people to visualize, lifting concrete or lifting a house for structural repair through radio. Somebody out there is probably going to say it's working great for them. I just haven't figured that out yet. But I do look at it like a pyramid. So number 1, what are the simplified things that you need to build off of? Online marketing, social media, heck, even going through all the different pages like Yelp, BBB, Manta, and making sure your information's accurate. That's really simple. In that bottom of that pyramid, I would put referral marketing, like getting out, whether or not you're part of the home builders, referral groups, anything like that, making sure all of your trucks are wrapped, making sure that you have a call to action on your whatever is visible to the customer. Then we step up into, all right, now we can spend a little bit more money because we've gotten good lead flow. On that would be home and garden shows. Then we get into print media. Yes, I know that sounds wild. People still read newspapers, and we still do direct mail that gets categorized in there. Then you kind of step up into some items that are more probably pushing into the expensive realm, which would be, getting into your television over the top, which if you don't know over the top is, your streaming services, YouTube television, Hulu, all of that. And then you get into at the very top, which you're getting so big in the market that you can afford to push branding out that's naturally going to come back. That's where you get into your endorsements from paid, call it professionals or even athletes, to billboards, to heck, paying Jimmy to fly around the city with an airplane and a banner out of the back. I mean, we're just throwing mud on the wall at that point. But you have so much in the market that people know your name and things like that. So first and foremost, it all comes back to the internet. That's how all of us are wired. And that's if you're not focusing or even budgeting, even a few $100. Good friends at Revival Landscaping. We know them. We've got some of their koozies here. They hit a big lull in lead flow and realized, we actually haven't budgeted to consistently pay for Google advertising every single month. And we learned about that in Bill Crawford's podcast, that you gotta consistently pay that Google monster. And then if you want to ramp it up or down, you can later, but you got to be putting something in it. So
Right. Yeah, you got to spend some money to make some money.
Oh, yeah. Well, and that's how I look at marketing. If you had a machine that you, like, call it a slot machine, you went and put $1 in the top and then now the bottom came out 10, you would play that game
over and over again. I'd be coming back to that, yeah.
That's how marketing is, at least in home services. So hopefully that answered the question. All right, next one.
All right, we got the next one. Would you hire a field supervisor or a salesperson first? And what would you pay them? So I would assume this question's from a listener that's really early on and is just now expanding the team, probably has a couple installers or production crewmen, and looking field supervisor or salesperson first.
So immediately I think of, I won't go for me first. I'll go for an example. A good friend of mine, Isaac, owns Bay Remodeling in Tampa, Florida. I was kind of caught in the same instance. So, do I hire the salesperson or do I hire the field person? Because he had been managing both, been going out in the field, then going out and managing the jobs. He's very subcontractor driven. So that was most of the focus, was herding the cats, so to speak, on subcontractors. So what I suggest, and by the way, what Isaac did was he actually hired the field person first, based on, in his brain's wired like mine, I'm more sales and marketing focused. And I want to get rid of the roles that I'm really not fulfilled in, but I may not be just excelling at, and I'm not good at. I can do operations and field-oriented services. I'm just not good at it. And I also just get burnout on it. So I would say to this person, first off, where do you find the most fulfillment in, and then go to that role and then hire out the other ones. And by the way, my brother is more operations focused, field oriented, not sales marketing. So if he were running the business, it'd be the exact opposite. But how to pay him? That could be something else.
Yeah, I know. You have to pay him. It's like the law or something.
I know.
It's ridiculous.
Crazy that people want to get paid. Honestly, they should be paid. And the market's changing. First thing I would say is go to your Chamber of Commerce and actually search the job description for what you are hiring for, and they'll give you some market demographics. People forget the Chamber of Commerce has all that data. So you can at least see, like, hey, am I even in the same ballpark? Salespeople, I'm a big believer in doing if it's a very let me rewind. Bloop, 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 bloop. Sorry. If it's a very fast sales cycle, I would suggest doing more of a commission structure, straight commission structure. If it's more of a slower sales cycle that develops a lot of relationships and long sales cycles, harvested businesses where one account could land you continuous projects for years and years and years, then you're getting into kind of a commission/salary role. I mean, from an HR perspective, is that what you find?
100% agree with that. Yeah. You want to highly incentivize the hunters that are getting you big books of business but quick.
Yeah. Then definitely on a field supervisor should be, in my opinion, this may change in 5 years, but currently base salary. I typically like to see those individuals in branded vehicles because they're out on the job site. They're seeing the jobs get done. The customers are seeing that individual more and more. And then some type of incentive on gross profit margin and completion percentage, because really at the end of the day, we have to get jobs done.
Mm-hmm.
And if we don't get jobs done, we don't get paid. So I really like to see that. And I've done this in tons of different variations. What is the BAHG? Big
Audacious Hairy Monster. Is that what you're thinking?
Big audacious hairy goal. Yeah, so like for a team, field supervisor or sales, like you gotta, if this is the goal at 100, give them 120 and be like, hey, if we hit that, then we're gonna send home about all the cool stuff we're gonna do and bonuses. I do believe in those. Some people call them loft goals, right? So I think that's great for any team. But anyway.
Yeah. Awesome. So in a nutshell, hire where you're weak. like replace what's weak in you with someone that has the strength, and then pay them so that they stay and succeed.
Did you just abbreviate my entire answer?
I did.
It took 5 minutes.
I love it though. No, you did. So, but that's awesome. Yeah. And this next question's great because it's also about pay. And I don't know if they've heard us talk about this before. This is something we're both really passionate about, but really simply, they just asked, what is performance pay? And I think they're referring to a performance pay model that you've used at your foundation repair company.
Well, and let me rewind a little bit because it does dovetail with performance pay. Is I'm not a fan of 1099 field supervisors or salespeople. I know I'm probably going to get a lot of shade thrown at me over that one because some industries that's how they're built, roofing to be one, and there's a lot of successful companies in roofing. But I am a fan of W-2'd employees because of, I have a set experience that I want each customer to have. So by having everybody in-house self-perform, that helps. So performance pay, that's why it dovetails, is a great way to, treat an installation team or an in-house team like a subcontractor without them having the risk of being a subcontractor and owning their own business. So we're going to either budget, and I've seen this with our clients done so many different ways. It's pretty cool. I have always been a fan of saying, hey, the job is worth X. We are budgeting Y for labor. If you come in under, here's the difference. And we find where most people getting $20 an hour as a base and overtime, to be clear. After that bonus goes through for pay for performance, it's $30, $40, $50 an hour. Our highest person right now is over 60. Just on the phone this afternoon with some folks in South Dakota, person making literally $80 an hour on this model. But I've also seen other companies, common in the spray foam insulation and fencing world, where they charge per linear foot or square foot. And so then the production teams are paid by the linear feet or square feet, but it's all meant to be budgeting. And so what happens is that they always get their hourly and overtime, but it's essentially a gross profit share program. Most people don't realize that if you're a business owner out there and you're like, man, I would love to get to the point of doing profit share. Well, if you do performance pay, voila, you have a profit share program. It's just not net profit share, it's gross profit share. So I saw you typing over there. Did I mess something up?
No. I was looking something up real quick.
All right. Did you have to look up the difference between gross and net?
Yeah. What is this exactly? Which is a very funny segue to the next question, actually.
Oh, look at that.
That's hilarious.
I didn't look at them. Sorry.
No, this is good. That's a good segue to the next question. But I will also say, if you're interested in performance pay or you're this like piques the interest a little bit, send us a message. We'd love to, Will or myself, Dylan, we would love to talk to you about it and see if it's something we could implement with you guys at your company.
Yeah, we also have we have a spreadsheet we'll just give you if you want to try to explore on that world. But also, I mean, I've done this all the way down to like call center. That's not through our software application, but it's like, yeah, I need to see like 25 booked appointments per person. So if you guys hit 25 and for every call above that, we're going to actually give you $5 to $10 extra. Like, so there's a lot of ways that you can really incentivize and help people feel like, yeah, I'm not limited to the basic dollar per hour rate. So it's have fun with it.
So this next question, funny that you had said what you just said, but the next question is simply, I'm just starting out, so I assume they just started their business. What should I do for my accounting? And before you answer this, I'll just say to anyone that's listening, the previous episode, we had Martin Holland on, and phenomenal talking about accounting. So you should listen to that episode, but go ahead and answer, I'm just starting out. What should I do for my accounting?
Yeah, so first off, find an accountant. That sounds so insulting. No, I'm sure that I'm a big fan of just keep it simple at a small level. QuickBooks Online is a great resource. Many of the folks that we work with that are starting out, they're typically pretty involved in the field operations of the business, so they need something mobile. So QuickBooks Online is a great resource for that. Martin's book is awesome in understanding. Most people just start managing from their bank statement. I think of Elijah Steiner back when he was on our show early on about, man, I sold an $8,000 job and I immediately went in and quit my job at in the Air Force or what, I don't know what it was, but he's like, we're going to be rich. Well, he didn't understand that it's like, hey, yeah, there's costs associated. And by the way, if you don't understand this, cost is what you pay for it. Price is what the customer pays for it. So, yeah, make sure you have an accounting software that integrates with your bank. So then that way it's easier to expense. You want to find a good CPA, which, by the way, when I went to looking, I've got tons of CPAs, but when I look for CPAs, I go to the most successful people and in my space that I admire and trust. I say, who is your CPA? Would you recommend them? And they'll tell you. And then you want to schedule a monthly meeting with that person. That was, in my young days, I was really bad about that. It's just like, man, I paid myself a X amount of salary, and then every quarter I'd go in there and like be told a bunch of math jargon that I didn't understand. Mind you, I was 20 years old. So when my first business, but having a good CPA and a regularly scheduled meeting with that person to help describe what is going on in the past, what you should be looking forward in the future. And then also finding a more strategic advisor like a Martin Holland to help make sure that you're looking out the windshield, because most CPAs and accountants, they're trying to keep you compliant, not give you advice on how to run your business. And I think that's what a lot of people get it wrong. They expect that from their CPA, but that's not their specialty. That'd be like going to your CPA like, hey, how would you sell this project? Like, what would be your process to build value? And anyway, that's no knock against CPAs that are focused on that, but that's
yeah. I mean, it makes sense. There's a lot of accountants out there that, and again, no knock on accountants, but a C gets degrees, right? You can get a C and you can pass, but that doesn't make your company grow. You need some sort of coach that's going to get you to that A level that takes your company and sees what's going on in your accounting and enables you to make good business decisions going forward.
Oh, and you got people out there like consultants. Martin Holland would be a great resource. I mean, for what you could pay Martin Holland a month to meet with you and actually just get a strategy for what needs to be done would cost a third of somebody actually being in the business. I would even say maybe a quarter. So they are out there. Heck, reach out to us. I got tons of them I'd happy to recommend, because it is part of the business that has to be dealt with for you guys to scale. So
awesome. The next two questions, I'll just ask them kind of back to back, and they're both about job postings. So first one is, where do you go to post your job openings? And the second one is, how much do I spend on job openings?
Well, I'm going to let you answer that, Mr. HR, because I'm going to say, well, I'm going to lead in because it goes back to the first question. Hiring individuals is a marketing and sales game. And now, granted, I will say, no, it is. I was going to contradict myself, but it is, because we'll talk about referrals from other employees. That's just like business. You want to ask your customers for referrals. Same for your employees. So I'm going to let you answer that, Mr. HR. By the way, what's HR stand for?
I got that wrong. Yeah. So where do you go to post your job openings? Honestly, I'm kind of preferential towards Indeed.
It is the big player.
It's the biggest of the players. It's very user friendly. They have some cool sort of ways that you keep notes and keep track of different candidates. You're just gonna open yourself up to a lot of possibilities. That's what basically you want to post where people are wanting to apply, and people hear about Indeed. They hear about ZipRecruiter, and no knock on ZipRecruiter. I have had less luck with ZipRecruiter. And that could be different for every person in every industry, but
yeah, and also region, because ZipRecruiter was something that was used very often out east. Heck, there's parts of the country where Craigslist is still incredibly active. It's weird to say Craigslist, because it's just not active in our market. But yeah, ZipRecruiters, it just depends on where you're at.
Yeah, totally. And then in terms of the cost, it really depends on the kind of position, because a lot of times these companies will charge you based off of how many other postings are like it in the market. And so you're going to pay more because, hey, everyone's posting for a sales opening, right? And so don't be afraid of that. I think it's reasonable that if it's going to take something, 4 or 6 weeks to find someone, you're probably going to be paying $400 to $600, maybe $1,000 for that posting. And that's reasonable. And I know that that's hard to stomach, because you're like, man, that's $1,000. Are you kidding me? That's just going out the door. But what are you losing by not filling that seat? That's how you need to be looking at it. It's an opportunity cost that ultimately I need to put that $1,000 in as an investment so that I get the person in the house and we start making money again. So it's a mindset shift, but it can be expensive to fill. And I think we've come across a number of contractors that it's like, yeah, it's been 3-4 months and I still haven't filled this seat. And it's like, if you would have just put $500 more to your posting, you probably would have had someone 2 or 3 months ago. And what revenue would they have brought in to the company?
I'm glad you said that, because one thing I was thinking of is, if you can truly understand your revenue per full-time employee, that is what gives me motivation to spend money on recruiting. And for any of you that don't know this, that's how Dylan and I met. Was I redefined how we were recruiting and hiring people in our company, and it was becoming overwhelming. And I didn't think, and this was probably, I don't know, 8 million at the time. And I was like, we don't need a recruiter. And then I spoke to a few other companies that got recruiters back when they were like 3 million. And it is a game changer. So that's where Dylan and I met. We'll have a flashback moment. But it is one of those where it's just like, if you want leads, you got to advertise, right? So if you want recruits, you got to advertise. But once you know your revenue for a full-time employee, if it's $250,000 of revenue that is generated per full-time employee, yes, absolutely, I will spend $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 to get an individual in the company, because it is what is slowing our business down.
Yeah. And another really simple way to put this is, if your company is big enough that, hey, this truck operating today brings in $5,000 in revenue. Let's say there's 2 or 3 bodies on that truck to operate that truck, and you have 2 or 3 people quit. You're telling me that you're losing $5,000 in revenue every day that thing's not running. So until you get those 2 or 3 people back, you hire 2 or 3 people back, you're losing $5,000 every day. So then now that $1,000 in a job posting per person doesn't look so big, right?
Things there that happen though, when you make that paradigm shift and you say, okay, I am going to consistently invest in recruiting. Where most folks screw it up is they get the candidates, but they fail in the onboarding. I don't know. Is that a question over there?
We don't know.
So onboarding is to make sure that if you spent $3,000 finding that person, to make sure that they don't quit in a month or 2 months, because this is how I feel frontline all the way to high up, call it management level. But many of you out there are going to get to that point where it's like, oh, heck, I mean, what's the biggest group of individuals we ever onboarded, Dylan? Like 8 like on Monday, we have 8 new employees starting. And I know there's people out there that, man, they'll onboard 20, 25. So it's like 8 multiplied by, call it, I don't know, $3,000 a person that we maybe have found those individuals. Yeah, let's take some extra time to make sure that they know our core values, who we are, who to go to for payroll. And I've been there where it's like, man, we are so behind. Just throw a T-shirt at them and be like, there's your truck. Call me at the end of the day and let me know how it goes. You're going to be working with John. And that's just like when you start to see the value of revenue per full-time employee as it relates to hiring, but then also the importance of onboarding. Oh, man, it works wonders on retention and long-term values. So
Big time. Here's the next question. So how can I make KPIs, so key performance indicators, how can I make key performance indicators or metrics for my production team? What do you use?
Okay, so let me rewind a little bit here. Depends on the size and sophistication of the company. I'm going to say if I'm a small contractor, first thing is, what did you install this month? Like, what is your install volume? You know this from psychology. People want to know what they're measured on, but they also want to know where they rank. And it's not meant to be a competitive sense. It's just meant to kind of give relevance to their role. So install volume per month should always be a KPI. Collection, meaning if you are in home services, if you're not in home services, that's a different thing. Next thing is, I know it sounds weird, customer satisfaction. They call it a net promoter score. Like, are they genuinely happy with their services? By the way, do you know the history of net promoter score?
I have no idea. It's always been a weird term to me.
It's a weird term to me. I don't know the history. I asked you, hoping you would know the answer.
It's like net promoter score sounds like a thing from like 30 or 40 years ago. And now, I mean, I talked to a business this morning and they're like, we don't really care about that NPS, net promoter score. Like we literally we live and die by Google reviews. Like that's all we care about. I'm like that's fair, but it's some way to measure your customer satisfaction. And that is a metric you could hold for your production team. Did you get any Google reviews this week?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. And you got to share the good and the bad. I see a lot of companies that say only celebrate the good reviews and not the bad. And to anybody out there listening, I understand just the heartache that comes with getting a bad review. Still to this day, I mean, I've got thousands of online reviews, and when I get a negative one, it hurts me as a human being. But it's still not a good metric to measuring, hey, how did this go for the production or install team? So I am still, it's weird to call it net promoter score. Customer satisfaction, that's a big thing. You graduate up, you're getting into gross profit margin on jobs, completion percentage, which we talked about. If you've got a very fast sales cycle, completion percentage. Callbacks and downtime is big in certain industries. How many times do we have to go back out? HVAC, huge in certain markets. We have a few clients that are HVAC companies. Warranty callbacks is a huge metric that they measure on. It's kind of a reactive metric, and that's not how my brain is wired. I hate to be reactive. I like to be proactive, but that's something. And then, of course, job costing, which relates to, how many materials were used. When you get insanely sophisticated, you're getting into a little bit more of like the 5S world, where it's like truck cleanliness, checklisting, retention of crew, downtime of vehicles because of proper maintenance, to, all sorts of stuff, inventory controls. So I would say for most people, including myself, even if I got to 100 million, major three that four I'm going to look at is install volume per week, collection percentage, and then I'm going to look at labor rates, and then I'm going to look at customer satisfaction. And yeah, I'll probably keep it that way until I change my mind.
So we'll ask the question again tomorrow.
Yep. Yeah. No, give me a few weeks, then I'll change it.
This next question,
Hold on, I got to time out real quick. Yeah, so the reason it will change is I will go down to my shop on a Saturday to do something or pick something up, and then I'll pull open the back door of a truck, and it's like a bomb went off in the back. And then I'll be like, all right, we're measuring everybody on truck cleanliness. Which it happens, you know.
Yeah, and it's that principle of like what you inspect or what you inspect what you expect. Yeah, there we go. So yeah, so if you're not looking at it, then it's probably going to bite you eventually. This next question, not a ton of context, but I'm going to read a little bit of context into it. So it sounds like a younger company, and they're getting some new hires. So here's the question: any advice for my first hires as I grow to a more estimating an office role?
Any advice for new hires as it relates to estimating an office role?
So it sounds like whoever this is maybe moving into a more of an office role or admin role, maybe going out and doing some sales. And so they're probably transitioning to a manager. Any advice?
First and foremost is I think we talk about this with Les McCowan, wrote a great book called Predictable Success. And the first stages of a business is called the early struggle. When you don't have money, you sometimes don't have any customers. You know, in construction, this is good. You have market validation. It's like, yeah, people build houses, buildings, business offices, office buildings, and they break and they need repaired or they need built. So there's no need for market validation in the construction world, right? It's there. It's been around for forever. Then you get into fun, which is when you actually start getting cash flow, but you realize everybody's capacity stretched. Then you get into the next step, which is whitewater. So when I hear this, and by the way, whitewater is when you bring on a bunch of people, but there's no systems, processes. They're not at their capacity yet. So when I hear this transition, number one, I'm going to say, what is your cash position? And do you have enough cash to sustain the rough water coming up? Because, well, shit, Dillon, you've seen me do this, where it's like, it's an easy job. I did it for 2 months, and like, hey, this is what I do. Here you go. Bam. And then they don't do the job as good as you.
Yeah, apparently they don't have all of the years of experience, so you just show up and make it happen.
Well, like when I brought you on for recruiting, like how long did we were attached at the hip for like, what, 3 months?
Yeah, solid 90 days.
Yeah, and I hated it. I hated every minute of it.
Yeah, I'm just miserable to be around. It was so...
No, I didn't hate you, but I hate training, and it's just like, I just want to like work on what I want to work on, but now I have this like, well, you got a baby at home. So it's like you got a newborn baby as an employee. So when I hear a question like this is, number one, check your cash position. Make sure can you sustain it. Number two, do you actually have a system and process to allow the transition to happen? Because sometimes, and I'm guilty for it, it's like, hey, I don't have a process for this. Go dream it up and you make the process. When they have no idea what your core values are, they don't know what you do, even as a business in many cases. You know, they came from like replacing windows and then moved into roofing. It's like, oh yeah, that all translates. No, sometimes it doesn't. And then the administrative function of, is there enough to make sure that the learning curve, because no matter, even if you have somebody sophisticated that knows the role, there's still like a 90 to 120 day learning curve. Just getting into the flow of things, that's going to create a cash burn. It's going to increase indirect overhead, decrease profits before it finally comes to fruition. So check those boxes first. Did I answer that question all right?
Yeah, I think you did. And if I were to add anything else in that, I would just say, you know, if these are your first new hires, or maybe let's even say it's your fourth and fifth that you're adding to the team, you're at a really vulnerable stage, right? You know, when you're so young, you can get burned so quick because you only have so much leash to work with. And so just do your due diligence, actually do check references, actually do get to know them a little bit, and then do, again, inspect what you expect and make sure that you're really training them well, because ultimately, like, the first people you hire could really burn your company, or they could be the managers that you want in 5 years, right? Because they've been with you and they understand who you are, and they get behind your purpose. So,
hey, I'm glad you said that. Thank you. Because we have some clients that I think you see where they haven't made that leap, so they cling on to family members to fill roles in the business because either they're willing to take less pay or they're willing to tolerate more leniency. I mean, have you found that? That's, I think, why there's so many family-owned construction companies. Well, any business, I guess, in that matter.
yeah, I think you're right. I would imagine that there's some level of I don't want to say we lower the expectations sometimes with our family members, but I do think that happens. It's like I can be a little bit softer on my sister doing this for me because it's, she's helping me out, right? Which you probably wouldn't have been if you just like hired someone you didn't know. So you have to be really careful there, especially if they're an early on hire, because like, what you do now is going to have a massive impact for you in 1 year, 5 years, and 10 years.
I think that's a stigma in construction, just in general. Maybe not when you get into the big commercial world, but in the small home services-based businesses, call it the mom and pop plumbing company. It's easier to have the family members be a part of that organization, which essentially stifles the ability, and sometimes it gets rejected when you bring somebody new into the business that's not part of the, hate to sound so mafia-like, but part of the family, that it never happens. And that otherwise small brick-and-mortar operation could have been a $10 million operation, but it never crossed $300,000 a year. So anyway, that's a theory on my part, but anyway.
Well, this next question, so we just brought on some new hires, but the next question is, now we have employees. How frequent and how long should my meetings with employees or departments go? Any advice here? I've tried different things and don't really know what works well.
Well, let's break this down, because I'm not trying to get too long-winded in my answer. So if it's a group of individuals that are in a quote-unquote said department, 1 hour a week, I think is a must, and it's not meant to be like, all right, let's get around, how'd everybody's weekend go? Like, it has to be done with intention. Like, there has to be an introduction and that has a positive start. People need to know how they're measured. There needs to be some reflection on the previous week. And I just picked up on this week in my own company. You know this, Dillon, where it's like we rank our meetings at the end of it. And then if somebody gives like an 8 out of 10, okay, what could be better? But we never revisit it. So it's like, okay, so you have to revisit the previous week because there's something that came out of that meeting that was really important for the company. And it's like, hey, I just noticed that we're not labeling the pitch of the roof, and that could be really important for the installers. Well, oh, that's a good idea, Jimmy. Great. And then it's never mentioned again. Like, so the next week, it's like, hey, Jimmy brought up this whole thing about measuring the pitch of the roof, and I noticed like only 4 of you did it. Like, maybe we didn't translate it well enough. Like, let's revisit this, how it results to benefit our customers, our company, everything. Then we get into customer feedback, which we talked before. It's really important to give customer feedback. It is the litmus test that said our experience that we're leaving with people is either last or lasting, I like to say. And then we get into, reporting, the housekeeping. There's always something like, hey, they're paving the parking lot over there, so you got to make sure don't park on that side of the building, park on this side. There's always housekeeping, like take the trash down, there's a new key to the lockbox, anything like that. So that's kind of my standard department meeting. Then when we get into employees one-to-one time, depending on the amount of reports you have and the level of authority they have in the company, I think that 1 hour a week is a must for high authority, high decision-making positions in order to develop the relationship and trust that's needed. The lower authority, it's like most people would neglect them. Actually, you know what? They probably neglect even the higher ups. Am I wrong, Dylan?
Yeah, I think lower ups or lower ups, it feels weird. Lower level employees, if I could say that. Yeah, they probably get neglected more often, but there's tons of companies where it's just like meetings don't happen, period. It doesn't matter who you are. You just kind of assume they're doing their job, and you'll meet with them when they do something wrong. And I think what you're kind of describing is like, well, if you don't build a relationship with them, when things go wrong, you're not going to be able to leverage that relational quotient to like move things forward and make things better. And so we need to build that, even if that's a regular cadence of 15 minutes. But like, yeah, an hour a week seems reasonable when you're saying that they're working 40 hours. Like, I can build a relationship and see how things are going and what needs to improve for that 1 hour, and it's going to pay dividends in the long run.
Yeah, and we make this joke, well, back to the employee aspect. If they're front end, you got to give them at least 15 minutes or 30 every 2 weeks, no longer than every 2 weeks. You've heard me. I practically, any of you know me, I've got tattoos on my left arm. I need to tattoo on my right arm. Have check-ins with your employees every 2 weeks, no longer. Like that's a mantra of mine. Sorry, I'm going to top off, Dylan. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. And ultimately it's like people just need connection, right? And it's a kind of a simple human characteristic that we want to know that we're doing all right, or if we're doing wrong, someone needs to tell us in a respectable way instead of feeling targeted like, yeah, you've been doing this wrong for 6 weeks and I just haven't told you about it, but now you're fired, right? Like, oh, okay, you could have told me for the last 6 weeks and I could have shaped up and changed something or asked for training. And that's what happens in a meeting.
Oh, so the correlation is this. Like, you go out to a job site, you meet with a customer, you give them the estimate, they say, yes, we love it, go ahead, schedule it. And then you start doing the work and everything's going smooth in your mind. And then you get to the end and everything's done. And they're like, hey, by the way, like, we're not going to pay you because of these 10 things. And you're like pulling your hair out because it's like, well, why didn't you just tell me these things as we went along? Employees feel the same way about their employers, especially in construction. It's just like, don't wait 3 months to tell me I'm not going to get that raise when I could have already been correcting the behavior. And that's not needy. That's not entitlement. It's just the employee saying, if you give me continuous feedback, I will correct the behavior. But you got to make time for that continuous feedback. And a lot of people don't. And sorry, that's just, I'm getting all fired up now.
Well, we're coming to the end here. And this is the last of the questions that I've got on this list.
We're being so.
Yeah. But this is the last of the questions, and I think it's good because it culminates on, you've done all of these previous questions exceptionally well. Where are you going to land? Hopefully you can create value in your business. So here's the question. I want to sell my business in the future. What should I be thinking about right now? And in parentheses, my company is only a couple of years old.
Age of the company really doesn't matter unless it's like 6 months old. It's like, I created a business. It's 6 months old. I want to sell it for 5 times the amount of revenue. No. Number one, understand what the hell EBITDA stands for. And then also understanding the multiples of your space as it relates to EBITDA. So most construction companies are, if number one, sold and they have systems and processes, then they're sold on a multiples of EBITDA. If you are not to that point, then you're essentially selling the business as an asset, which means you're selling a job. And that's very common in construction. We see companies, and I hate it when I see companies just shut down because, mom and dad retired and nobody wanted to buy it. I was like, there's still some value there. There's equipment, there's branding, there's a phone number, there's a website, like there's something to buy there. Well, no, I know amortization is last, but there's a B in there. Oh, before amortization, I was like, what's the B? So earning before interest taxes, or interest taxes before amortization. So like all of that has to be figured out And then that's really, if somebody's buying it, that's what they're buying is what can this business do for me in my absence, which is shown in the EBITDA. So that's another thing. Lastly is debt will ruin the returns of selling your business. So if you can sell your business for $3 million, but you own $1 million in debt, well, guess what's coming out of the proceeds? When they cut a check for your business, you're going to have to turn around. They're not going to buy debt. That doesn't happen. And sometimes it does. It's just not smart. But you don't buy a company to buy debt. So out of the proceeds of the sale, you're going to immediately take what could be a great return and have to pay off tons of debt. So, boy, long answer. Did that help? Was that clear, Dillon? Besides my ruining of EBITDA?
That's right. It just reinforced a previous question that we need an accountant.
No, that's all right. And by the way, I love accounting. I love reading reports. I hate just all the intricacies of it. And I don't do the input on it. You know that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that, and we've talked about this before, we just need to have the eyes that we could sell this company. And it's not something that you're just doing as a job, but like, what do I need to do to like put this in a good position? Odds are that is, yeah, you really do need to talk to an accountant about that. Make sure your books are as clean as they can be and transparent, so that someone that would be an acquiring interest might say like, yeah, I can clearly recognize these are the kind of margins that you're producing, and I'm comfortable and excited about that.
Well, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because people forget that if you build a house, that thing is worth money. That house is an asset. Whether or not it's appreciating or depreciating could be argued. But if you build a house, you're going to have the mortgage debt on it, but then you're eventually going to build equity. A business is the same way. And yes, you should build it as if you're going to sell, even though you're never intending to sell. Because, you could be building a business that is worth 5, 6, 7, 10, 20 million and not even know it. In the amount that could bring in value to your personal financial statements has a lot of just good that can come from the world and your family by looking at your business like a asset, just like you'd look at a home. And that's kind of a primitive caveman way of looking at it. But I just spoke to somebody the other day that was in the acoustics business, meaning drywall and tile. And they were like, I just don't see my company being of any value. And I'm like, how much revenue do you do? Probably do 8 million in revenue.
What?
I know. And what? Are you kidding me? I was so involved in it, and it's my family business. And I'm like, oh my God, this is crazy. Like 8 million in revenue, and they didn't see value in it. So we reworked the numbers, and it's like at a 10% net, you get 6 times multiple for this. Like, now, granted, value is worth what somebody's willing to pay for it, but they took something that their perceived value was 0, and just in an instant, their brain switched and realized, holy cow, I'm actually sitting on a very valuable asset. And by the way, no debt. This company had no debt. And I'm like, it was just, they've just been doing the family business for so long and never realized, holy cow, this is worth money. So it's just, man, we talked about this on a few podcasts, including Martin's last one. Business owners, they're some of the most humbling and noble people when you look at it that way, because sometimes they're just doing what they think they're doing right, and they're just trying to be nice to people and keep happy customers. They have no clue, because they're not greedy. Many of them are not greedy. They're not looking at, holy cow, I just built a $10 million business. And it's just wild to me. Anyway, sorry.
That is wild.
Was that the last one?
That is the last one. So I'll say that.
Did you chop some down? Or just 10, right?
Yeah, 9 or 10. I don't know. I can't count. But if, in the future, we'd love to do this again. So if anyone out there is listening to this and has some questions, throw them our way. You could do that a couple different ways. Comment on a YouTube video. We'll get that You can also comment on LinkedIn or shoot us an email. I'll give you Will's email real quick. It is Will, W-I-L-L, @unisonworks.com, UNISONWORX.com. We'll take those questions. We'd love to do another episode like this. This was a lot of fun. I feel like it's rapid fire, and it's just like there's high value, and we want to get this value back to you guys. So we'd love to answer those questions for you in the future.
Yeah, it's funny. We had Terry Kleinfelter on based on a comment on YouTube. It was like, you better have Terry on. I was like, all right, well, I guess we'll get Terry on.
The audience has spoken.
Yeah. So anyway, we look forward to another few of these episodes, but we'll be back to our regular format next week. But otherwise, man, you guys have a great week, and looking forward to seeing you next week. Appreciate you.
Enjoy the grind. We'll see you guys.
Welcome to Beers with Contractors. Grab your favorite beer, pull up a seat, and let's have a chat about the nuts and bolts of the construction industry. And that's a wrap for today's episode of Beers with Contractors. We hope you enjoyed our chat as much as we did. Before we say our final goodbyes, a friendly reminder. Beers with Contractors encourages responsible drinking. If you choose to enjoy a beverage during our time together, please do so in moderation and only if you're of legal drinking age in your country or state. Furthermore, the advice and insights shared in this podcast are for informational purposes only. Always consult with professionals and experts in your field, and be sure to follow local laws and regulations regarding licensing and permits. We're here to help, entertain, and inspire, but your safety and compliance are important. So, as you head out into the world of construction and contracting, remember to build responsibly and make decisions that stand the test of time. Thanks for joining us today. We'll catch you on the next episode of Beers with Contractors. Until then, cheers to your success.